I guess our channel should be renamed to something like VRAM Lab. Anyway, this video was planned to be a general 4060 Ti review, which is a bit late, but you know it's hard to get your hands on recent hardware when you have less than 3k subs. And it's not a general review, it is again a video about VRAM limitation. It is just not easy enough to talk about other aspects of the 4060 Ti just because the VRAM subsystem is so poorly designed, and I'm talking about the 16 gigs version as well. But let's not hurry and talk about everything in order. Hello and welcome back to Hardware Lab. Ada Lovelace is a controversial, if not a failed generation of GeForce GPUs, and there is nothing really to do with the engineering side of things because engineers are doing their job. Frame generation, increased RT performance, 5nm technology, these are all great things. But do the customers get any benefits out of their usage? RTX 4090 users maybe, but in the main end, the actual GPU configuration are something that can ruin the fantastic architecture. RTX 4060 Ti has only 34 SM blocks, which is even less than its not very successful predecessor had back in 2020. The amount of roster operation blocks is cut down even further and equals the 3060s rather than 3060 Ti's. And of course, the textures cut it down as well. But the worst thing in 4060 Ti's configuration lies in the memory subsystem. There are two available versions of 4060 Ti, with 8 and 16 GB of GDDR6 on board. 16 GB seems like an alright option for this price class, but 8, as I guess you all know from previous videos, is totally unacceptable. We could do the same thing as with the A770 review and recommend just to avoid the 8GB version if you are not ready to load down your game settings in recent titles, if that was the only case, but it is not. RTX 4060 Ti has a stupidly cut down memory bus, just 128 bits. Last time we saw something like this in non-low-end GPUs was on the RX 6600 XT, and it was a major issue even there. But RX 6600 XT didn't launch in 2023, it did launch in 2021, with a recommended price of $379 instead of $399, not even mentioning that after some time it even got close to $30-50 in terms of price. And that's not all for the similarities with 6600 XT. One more similarity is 8 lines PCIe slot instead of proper 16. So the 4060 Ti's memory subsystem is the same series of bottlenecks, stretched one on top of the other, as the 6600 XT's one, but within a minor, not even worth mentioning issue. It is 2 years newer with a higher price. And you know what? They say 32MB L2 cache is there to fix this issue. Come on, why do you even need the proper memory on your GPU if 32MB L2 can solve everything? Oh wait, maybe because modern games in Quad HD can be easily VRAM limited even on 12GB models at times, and their demand not only to the buffer size but to the bandwidth is getting higher and higher as well to produce a better image quality and faster streaming of more and more complicated assets? Stupid Sony and Microsoft engineers, throw away all your cool memory subsystem stuff and just give us back our RDNA 2L3 then, what are you doing? So yeah, for this video we have an 8GB RTX 4060 Ti, but don't worry, we'll make an additional test in the non-VRAM limited scenario so that the result can be easily extrapolated on the 16GB card. We just wanna check out how bad the 8GB option actually is. First competitor to our green disappointment is the RTX 3060, fine wine 12GB middle end from 2020 that had a release price of $329 and can be found in specs today for as low as £230. It has a stunning 192-bit bus, the full PCIe 4.0 connection port, and all the other attributes of a decent GPU that 4060 Ti lacks. Our second competitor to 4060 Ti is an Intel RK770, a secret light blue weapon with 16 gigs of VRAM with even more massive bus of 256-bit with a half terabyte bandwidth. This boy is also a previous gen mid-end released in 2022 with an MSRP of $329. Currently sales price on ARC starts with £300 for 16GB version and $220 for the 8GB one, which is actually a good deal. So as you can see, both competitors to 4060 Ti that we chose should be an easy win. I mean, they are previous gen middle ends, and 4060 Ti is supposed to be the current one, and even a bit better because it's Ti, not the regular 4060. But would we do this kind of test if there was nothing interesting in them, right? Well, let's find out. Right after discussing the testing rig, because there are some really important things you need to know before watching the test section. All the GPUs were tested on my standard rig with a Ryzen 3900X and 16 gigs of RAM. 16 gigs of RAM can sometimes overflow when VRAM limited, and in general it's not the 100% best test system. However, most of the issues connected to 8GB VRAM cards tend to happen on whatever rig you have, and they never differ that much as soon as the supported version of PCIe, in our case 4.0, is activated, as well as the resizable bar if supported. All the tests were done in 1440p with ultra or close to ultra settings, and as usual the numbers for the final graph were calculated during separate run from recording to get rid of the recording performance impact. Intel Arc recording settings were set at lower than GeForce and Radeon due to bigger performance impact usually seen with Arc codec, but even despite that, the impact was higher. Keep that in mind during your watch and pay attention to the final graphs. The Callisto protocol seems like an easy win for 4060 Ti I was talking about. During the benchmark run, the VRAM consumption never gets close to 8GB and everything is okay. Okay means actually good, taking in mind the 4060 Ti's VRAM bandwidth, and Intel Arc bug that we've seen in this game in our previous videos seem to be completely fixed. Yes, Nvidia, we remember that you want reviewers to test Cyberpunk on 4060 Ti only in Full HD and with the frame gen enabled, as if frame gen was something to do with the real FPS rendered by a game engine, but in Quad HD and without fake FPS, it is basically not too much faster than Intel Arc, at least the 8GB model. Not even to mention that the game constantly freezes on 4060 Ti due to VRAM overflow. There are only two GPUs in this test that can run Forspoken and Ultra more or less smoothly. None of these two is 4060 Ti. Yeah, on A770 and RTX 3060 you are getting a console 30. But what's the point of having higher frame rate if it's so stuttery? This is not a bug. This is a real behavior of 8GB 4060 Ti in Plugtail on Ultra settings with ray tracing. Yeah, none of the GPUs is doing great or playable, but on 4060 Ti it is not just unplayable, it's painful. A770 has its own prank for Plugtail players. The results are that bad because we were running northbound in the test scene. How is it connected to performance? I don't know, but if we turn southbound, or why I was even thinking it's north, maybe it's actually south, it doesn't matter. If we turn around, the frame rate raises, and we can run southbound with no issues. But we can't run northbound. The GPU starts showing underload and the FPS goes down. Well, even with that happening, Intel's results are not that much worse than the 3060s, and that's supposed to be the video about 4060 Ti, so let's try to fix its performance by applying some upscaling. So in this test we are using DLSS balanced on GeForce and temporal upscaling on Arc. The frame rate on 4060 Ti is now a bit closer to playable for console standards. It is still nowhere near 3060, but that would be something, if not one small issue, again connected to turning around. For some reason, whenever there is a fast camera rotation the game freezes on 4060 Ti. Probably this is connected to texture streaming. Remember, we are still over the available VRAM despite low internal resolution. So basically the numbers from the test run doesn't say anything about how comfortable it is to play the game. And the A770 is still doing its thing. How weird. I guess we found a second game where 4060 Ti is significantly faster than the previous gen mid-ends. Or did we? The problem is that run-to-run 4060 Ti can perform unbelievably bad. We were thinking that something is wrong with the game and it's some sort of bug, but firstly, nothing like this ever happened on 3060 or A770, and secondly, this thing is happening only in the first part of the run, where 3060 reports almost 8 or over 8GB VRAM consumption. 4060 Ti, however, doesn't report VRAM overflow, but still struggles, so we believe this weird behavior is also happening due to VRAM. In terms of average FPS, 4060 is significantly faster in Ratchet & Clank, but the frame rate is so unstable that I would definitely choose to play the game on A770 or 3060 rather than on 4060 Ti. A770 is the outsider in The Last of Us remake, providing significantly worse performance than both RTX GPUs. What is fun though is that 3060's and 4060 Ti's performance is almost on par in this game, but with 3060 providing a much smoother frame delivery. The 4060 Ti is obviously VRAM limited here, despite sensor reporting it is not. 4060 Ti's performance in Resident Evil 4 reminds me of the behavior of 3070 in this game. The frame rate is inconsistent, varies run to run, and jump easily from 70s to 40s and back. This specific spot where the game freezes all the time on all the GPUs shows the largest freeze on 4060 Ti. On other GPUs it feels like a minor stutter rather than a large freeze. The results of 4060 Ti are disappointing, but they were to be expected because it is an 8GB card. Still, the fact that Nvidia suggests buying this version, despite you can get worse performance than previous gen mid-ends on ultra and modern games, is crazy, and 4060 Ti 8GB should be considered as another anti-consumer product in our opinion. But what if we intentionally reduce the VRAM consumption in some games to take a look at the performance we can get from 4060 Ti when the VRAM buffer size is not an issue? The results in these tests can be easily extrapolated on the 16GB version. Optimization of the VRAM consumption requires us to set model and texture memory to low and standard respectively. Without VRAM overflow as a thing, 4060 Ti becomes a much stronger competitor to the old mid-ends, significantly overperforming them but still providing a bit less smooth frame time graph, probably due to lower bandwidth, cause this game really loves fast memory. Ratchet & Clank's 4060 Ti performance seems to be a lot better without VRAM buffer as a limiting factor. However, the consumption stays not far from 8GB even with low textures and disabled RT. It means we probably can become VRAM limited in some other scenes, even with that much of quality reduction. RE4 requires the usage of FSR quality to get rid of the VRAM limitation, and still the 4060 Ti frame time spikes are somewhat more noticeable than on the older cards, probably due to poor VRAM bandwidth again. Other than that, it is noticeably faster than both last gen cards. It is true in general that if we are not limited with the buffer size on 4060 Ti, it is almost impossible for the last gen mid-ends to reach comparable performance. However, some evidence of a poor memory subsystem are present no matter the settings, and again, these cards were not made to compete, and the fact that they can at some conditions is really a disappointment for 4060 Ti. But what if we had something from the previous generation of GPUs that is actually a bit higher tier? Let's welcome the RX 6700 XT, ladies and gentlemen. This GPU was released back in 2021. It has almost the same memory subsystem as the RTX 3060 with a difference in a cache structure. 6700 XT has a pretty impressive 96MB of third level cache, RDNA 2 architecture with 40 CUs, 46 rosters and 160 textures. And a quick note before watching the test. RX 6700 XT's tests were done by a different team member of ours who is located roughly 3k kilometers away in the region that is not even safe to travel to, so they were done on a different testing rig with the Ryzen 5 3600 and the same speed, 16GB of RAM. It shouldn't affect the result anyhow, the GPU load statistics is there, but it is worth mentioning. All the tests were done in a non-VRAM limited conditions for 4060 Ti, so they are fully representative for the 16GB version of the GPU as well. Yeah, if we test 4060 Ti against higher tier RX 6700 XT, even without VRAM limitation, things become less brighter for Nvidia's new card, even when the price difference between the two today is huge. Remember that this test can be extrapolated to the 16GB model of 4060 Ti as well. For the lower price, there are a bunch of options that are available on the new and used market that can at least save you some money, or maybe do both, save money and serve your requirements better than 4060 Ti. Depending on what you are looking for, there are RTX 3070, RX 6700 XT, RX 6800, RTX 2080 Ti, etc. So the only real advantage of 4060 Ti is the industry-leading power efficiency of Ada Lovelace architecture. And that's it for now. Hope you enjoyed this relatively sad story of another uncompetitive product on the PC market, and if so, consider subscribing to learn more sad and not only stories, and as usual, stay up to date with Age.